Okay, we're going to get things underway. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and good afternoon. Welcome to our uh, virtual business forum with our MPP Parm Gill. Uh, Parm, always a pleasure to have you with us. I'll be introducing you in a second, but in the meantime, I'm Scott McCammon. I'm President and CEO of the Milton Chamber, and I'm proud to have the Downtown BIA as a co-presenting partner of today's webinar, and I'll be calling on Rachel Shuttleworth from the BIA towards the end of the program to thank Parm. I want to start off by saying that throughout this pandemic, these forums that we've been having with our local politicians and even sometimes with cabinet ministers, I think have been incredibly important. It's a way not only for us to share information, but also to answer whatever questions the Milton business community has. So today's forum is no different. We're going to have opening comments from Parm, and then we're going to be opening it up to your questions. So you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom box, there's the Q&A field. So please feel free to be entering questions, and then following Parm's presentation, we'll get to those and answer as many questions as we can. So I think most of you know Parm quite well. I'm not going to do a long introduction, but Parm's been our MPP in Milton since June of 2018. But what some of you may not know is that Parm is also serving currently as the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And Parm was also an MP federally for 4 years prior to becoming our MPP. And just as important for most of the people on the call, Parm is also a business owner and has had a number of businesses, including in the restaurant sector. So is very familiar with some of the challenges facing that sector. So Parm has an incredible wealth and depth of knowledge and empathy, and so we're looking forward to a great webinar today. So with that, Parm, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Scott. And let me also take this opportunity once again to thank you and your team for the tremendous work that you guys do each and every day. And it's been an honor working with all of you since getting elected, and especially during COVID-19, some of the most challenging times, no doubt. And everything that you do for the local businesses and the membership. Keep up the great work. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be amongst all of you once again. We've done a number of these webinars, Zoom meetings since COVID-19. So whether you've attended these before or whether the first time you're attending, thank you and welcome, and looking forward to our discussion today. Obviously, I think we can all agree that it hasn't been normal for any of us. And as a member of the government, I can tell you that it's never easy, regardless what sort of decisions you're making. As a government, of course, you're going to please some people, and there are always going to be consequences sort of on the other end, or the negative impact. People aren't happy, and I can tell you that we get lots of correspondence each and every day from Miltonians, business owners, other organizations. So we're fairly well tuned in terms of what people are thinking and what some of the concerns and challenges are, especially amongst the business community. I mean, I think the small businesses are no doubt one of the hardest hit during COVID-19, and it hasn't been easy, especially going into now different color coded the plan that we released a few weeks ago, and especially previously during the lockdown and having to comply with public health regulations. But all of the business have been doing a tremendous job working with public health and listening to some of the parameters that have been put forward, be provincial, federal, regional, or municipal governments. So thank you. And I know that we get lots of correspondence, as I mentioned earlier, from our offices in our office, and we do our level best to reply in a timely manner and try to answer as many questions as we can. And if you are not on our distribution list, which we also share updates on a regular basis from my office, and if you'd like to be included to that list, please do not hesitate to send my office an email. Robert, who is also my EA and the policy advisor with me, he is also on the Zoom meeting, so he'll put our email address that could be used in case you don't have it in the chat. So please make note of that and contact us in any way that you can. Happy to be here, happy to answer any questions that we can, and also understand that I may not have answers to all of the questions, and would be happy to get back to you on items that we may not be able to answer right now, that may require a bit more digging into and making sure that you get the appropriate answer. So we will do that as well. And looking forward to our discussion. So I'll turn it back over to Scott. Thank you very much once again, guys, and thank you for taking the time. And we're doing everything we can from our end, and we'll continue to do it. It's been an honor and a pleasure to represent our community here at Queen's Park as part of the provincial government.
Thanks, Parm. And a reminder to everyone that the Q&A box is there, so you can fill those in. In the meantime, I'll ask a few questions, Parm. You know, I'm not sure if everyone is a policy geek like I am and subscribing to all of the news feeds from the provincial government, but you know, two things. One is it's very encouraging that the province is so good at communicating and sending out a lot of media releases. The downside is it fills up my inbox quite a lot, and there are a lot of issues to talk about, but you know, the one thing I saw in your recent newsletter was a shout out to DSV warehouse here in Milton. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the Premier's visit to Milton and to DSV.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And no doubt Milton is sort of the logistics hub when it comes to transportation. And we've got some amazing businesses in and around Milton that do an amazing job. And you mentioned DSV and the Premier and Minister Thompson. And I recently had an opportunity to visit DSV in Milton. And not many people know this, but DSV is actually responsible for shipping out all of the PPE right across our province. It's being sent out from Milton, believe it or not. So they've allocated 50,000 square feet just for the provincial government. And we also have our provincial staff actually on site there and shipping truckloads worth of PPE every single day to our correctional facilities, to our boards of education, and you name it. So it is being handled all out of DSV facility in Milton, and they've been doing a tremendous job. And I, obviously probably not surprised to anybody here, but also want to give a shout out to their staff that in some cases have worked double shifts on a regular basis. And I'm saying, put in like in neighborhood of 80 to 90 hours a week, believe it or not. And we met some of those people, and it's that's what's incredible, Scott. Everyone just kind of pulling up their socks and doing everything that is expected or asked of them, and going above and beyond. So thank you very much to everyone. No doubt there are a lot of business and organizations within our community that have been doing a tremendous job, looking out for one another, helping neighbors. So that's what's so beautiful, not just about Milton, but a province or a country that we call home.
And people probably know this, but early on in the pandemic, your office, the chamber, Richard Bolton from Centricity 360, the town of Milton, all came together to create the PPE portal to make sure that all of the Milton businesses that needed PPE had a source as well. And that website is still operational.
Absolutely. And, and I want to give a shout out to you. And I think, honestly, Scott, you and your team deserve a lot of credit. Our office, was obviously happy to work with you to put it in place. But it's also something that there are other chambers that have talked about, that have, I know, reached out to you and for your leadership in terms of how can they duplicate that for their members or in their community. So I think kudos all to you for your efforts and really leading by example and showing others a path forward. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question that's come in. It's a fairly long one, so I'll read it aloud to you. Wondering if you can provide some guidance for personal services businesses like myself who have been limited through the restrictions. We are registered through the town of Milton. We're health inspected. We follow all the COVID protocols, and we continue to be restricted. We're operating at 10% of our business, which is barely operable. And as we are not forced to shut down, and therefore we're limited to what we're eligible for in terms of subsidies. We struggle to understand why, when we can limit our customers by appointment, we use masks, laser goggles, shields on all the staff, pre-screening, but most retailers are not following the same strict guidelines. We have only 4 staff and therefore never more than 6 people in our clinic at a time. It just doesn't make sense when we have to follow the strict guidelines of personal services already. We've been in business for 36 years in Milton, and for the first time ever, we're considering permanently closing as we cannot function under these restrictions.
Let me just first say that I understand the pain, not just what you're going through, but a lot of the other businesses that are in similar cases. And, myself, who've run a number of businesses that Scott mentioned before, and I understand the pain firsthand, and so does the Premier and my other caucus colleagues. And this is something that we continue to work with our public health, with the command table. Ultimately, all of these decisions are obviously not made by the Premier or our caucus. They are made in consultation with the command table, with public health. We are in some ways, fortunately or unfortunately, obligated to take the advice of the healthcare professionals, the command table. And it's something that I can tell you that we are regularly, this has come up a lot. This is not the first time it's coming up on this Zoom meeting, especially over the last week or so. This continues to come up. Can businesses open by appointment in a limited way, and where all the precautions are taken and data captured? When we're putting out policies, it is hard to prepare and to look at every single scenario. Unfortunately, it is impossible. But what I can tell you is we're working with the public health and the command table to potentially look at revising some of these rules to accommodate exactly what you're asking. So, we'll see how far we're able to get, but I can tell you that Minister of Health, Christine Elliott, the Premier, and other cabinet colleagues are all on this. They're aware of the need and the urgency. Because it is, obviously no surprise, as you mentioned, unless, certain modifications are made, some businesses will have a real hard time surviving in the current environment, even though all levels of government are doing everything they can to provide all sorts of support that is required, or they potentially can. But ultimately, the governments aren't in a position to bail out every single business. That's ultimately, or the reality. And so we have to make sure that we balance between public health, also on the other side, looking at the economy, because people still do need to put a food on their table. They need to raise their family, pay out the mortgages, and we're mindful of that. So stay tuned. Hopefully there will be some changes at some point in time in the near future, and we'll keep you apprised. But if there's any specific information you're looking for in terms of programs or the subsidies that you might be available, please do send us an email. Just let us know, and Evan in my office is in charge of that, and he'd be happy to provide you all of the details.
And I think one of the challenges for the government through the pandemic is, things are changing hourly, daily, and so it's very difficult to plan too far in advance. But I know in talking to a lot of businesses, it's the predictability of trying to run their business. So, if you look at the restaurant sector, they have to buy food in advance. So when we went into red control with a couple of days notice, suddenly they were stuck with a fridge full of food that maybe couldn't be used. So I guess
And
where
one
I'm
of
heading with the question is, if it's again hard to plan further ahead, but if there's a sense that we're heading into a gray control, is there a longer lead time that can be given to Milton businesses?
and absolutely, and completely understand. There are all sorts of challenges, and we try our level best, obviously, to work with the command table to come up with the best possible scenario. But as you mentioned, Scott, I mean, because the dynamics continue to change hour by hour, day by day, and sometimes it is very, very difficult. But we do our best, and it's definitely something that I will be mindful and bring it up with my caucus colleague. But I do also want to say that we, as part of the recent budget introduced by Minister of Finance, we have kept a couple of $1 billion in contingency funds for potential programs, because this continues to change kind of day by day. So we're constantly in discussions with the businesses, with Ontarians, and in different sectors in terms of how and what we can do to provide them the assistance to stay afloat. And those couple of $1 billion that I mentioned that we've allocated in contingency in our budget are exactly for programs like those. So we have not hit the end. Obviously, we recognize there are a lot of individuals, businesses that need the assistance. So there will be new programs, new initiative that will be introduced in time to come by the provincial government to help those in need.
Can we talk more about that? And maybe you can elaborate on some of the announcements within the budget or some of the other announcements recently. I mean, especially for those regions like Halton that are in red control, there are a number of things that have been offered by the province. So we're looking at EHT, the health tax reductions. We're looking at
Yeah.
the $1,000 PPE contributions.
So, altogether, we've committed roughly $45 billion over 3 years, which is really direct support to do with or get through COVID-19. And 15.2 billion of that is actually going into healthcare, just to support the healthcare. And as you mentioned out, there's additional $100 million that is committed for Employment Ontario for skills training, $181 million in employment services for industries facing skill shortages. There's proposed to make changes to the employer health tax exemption permanent. That alone will help 30,000 employers. We're also reducing the business education tax rates by $450 million in 2021, and a 30% reduction for employers. And also, we're proposing new tools that would allow municipalities to provide a property tax reduction for their small businesses. And Ontario government will match these municipal property tax reductions as well. Simple items. In Milton, we also still, believe it or not, have a significant portion of my riding, which is rural. So a lot of businesses that are in the rural part of our community, a lot of our farming community, we're also committing $1 billion for broadband alone. And there's a project that recently was awarded to Sengen in the north part of Milton and Brookville area that will, hopefully by spring of next year, will provide a 5-kilometer radius, and this will be a high-speed internet service. And altogether for Ontario, we've committed to spending $1 billion, and I know federal government is also putting in fair bit on from their end to address the broadband issue, which is very significant, especially during some of the challenges now that kids are unable to, or parents that don't feel comfortable sending their kids for in-class learning. And of course have some challenges with online learning because they don't have a sufficient internet service, or they're running a business from home or working from home. There are all sorts of examples. So we're doing everything we can. And some of the other items you mentioned, Scott, helping small businesses with PPE. So that's $1,000 per business, and for anyone that has anywhere from 2 to 9 employees, they qualify for that. You mentioned the restaurant industry. I've also had the opportunity in my previous life to own more than one restaurant, and I understand the challenges. So why we introduced recently, as this week, a bill to cap the delivery fees charged by some of the delivery companies, such as Uber and Skip the Dishes and some of the others. So to help businesses, because they're paying in upwards of 30% on delivery fees, which is very, very difficult. I mean, there aren't that kind of margins. I can tell you, from my experience in the restaurant industry, it may sound or look to be a lucrative business. It's not, and the very, very small margins. And hats off to those that are trying to survive in this environment, because I can tell you it's got to be very, very, very difficult. It can't be easy.
We've got a couple more questions I'm going to get to in a minute, but I just want to focus for a second on the delivery fees. So right now, I think that's for the basically restaurants in the gray control area. So not yet applicable to Halton, but would the province look at trying to roll out the cap on delivery fees outside of the gray areas?
So absolutely. So right now it is for the lockdown area, so which is Peel and Toronto, and this is what I mentioned earlier. The $2 billion that we have in contingency, that we could potentially look at, divvying up in a whole bunch of different areas to make sure that we address the concerns. So absolutely, to answer your question, Scott, potentially these are the discussions that we continue to have behind the scenes, how and what we can do to help. So that may be expanded in the future to other areas, such as control or red zone that Halton happens to be in currently, and other municipalities.
So there's been a lot of talk about the vaccine, and even to the point where the premier is challenging the prime minister to make sure that the vaccine is available as soon as possible, and that Ontario obviously gets its fair share. But there's also the question around some of the transportation issues with the vaccine being, having to go at very low temperatures, -20 to -80, depending on the manufacturer. The one question that's coming in is, the province will be tasked with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. How can local companies better understand the distribution strategy and offer timely, innovative solutions?
So obviously, the minister has developed this task force, which is led by the former Chief of Defense, Rick Hillier. I think everyone knows that, and everyone has confidence in him. But in terms of a local, I can already tell you that our office has been working with a local business who also seems to have a solution. So we're working between the Premier's office, our office, and the business owner and the task force. So the solution may very well be found by a business in Milton. So which is obviously a great news. But there are challenges, Scott. You mentioned obviously, number one, vaccine needs to be approved by Health Canada. So it's not something that's in the control of the provincial government. Ultimately, federal government is responsible for the approval and also for securing the supply. And we look to the federal government for answers in terms of when is that going to happen? What sort of supply can Ontario look to receive and when. And all of these answers are necessary to put a plan together, led by the task force, led by Rick Hillier and his associates that are part of that task force, to make sure that, timely distribution right across this province can happen. And there are challenges, as you mentioned, because some of these vaccines do require to be kept at -80. Which is not going to be easy, but I can assure you that we're doing everything we can from our end, and we have some amazing people that are working, that are providing the advice, and that are in charge of making this possible. And we have every confidence that we'll be able to do this. Now, the biggest question that the Premier continues to ask, and our government continues each and every day, honestly, is unfortunately not in our control, but in the control of the federal government, to say when the approval will come and what sort of vaccine supply have they secured from which manufacturer, and when can we get our hands on so we can get it out to Ontarians.
Actually, the Milton company you're talking about is ATA. So I can say that because Anthony's actually on the call with us today.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know, Parm, if you'll indulge me, but maybe I can unmute Anthony's phone, and he can talk a little bit more about his product.
100%. Yes, let's do that.
Of course, as soon as I said that, he moved in the listing of people that I have.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, hi, Anthony.
Okay, Anthony, I think you're unmuted now.
Thank you. Yes, we've been following developments quite carefully, and we're very excited about the possibility of being able to help the situation. So we're really looking forward to learning where the gaps are and being part of a solution if it's possible.
And thank you for doing this. I mean, this was amazing, and to have a local business coming out of Milton and potentially bringing forward a solution which may ultimately solve the problem. Thank you, Anthony, for doing this. Obviously, to you and your leadership and your team.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've we've had the pleasure to help with the ventilators and making some modules for those earlier on in the year, and the talent that's locally available here. The community has really stepped up. We had people apply for positions around design, manufacturing, and build. So it's a pleasure to be part of this very strong community and help in every way possible.
Awesome.
I'm going to mute you again, Anthony. Okay, Parm, we're going to go on to the next question again. It's a fairly long one. So it starts, when the energy breaks were announced, my organization figured that we would qualify as a not-for-profit. It wasn't much compared to what we pay out, but it would certainly be a little something to offset escalating costs. Turns out, because we did the right thing and continued to pay throughout the pandemic, we're now unable to qualify. Some of the programs, while we welcome them, are somewhat bureaucratic and difficult for those of us in business still trying to navigate through these, particularly when you factor in red, orange, who can, who can't stay open. And as a public facility, it's turning more than myself gray. Your office, while good to work with, is not the government, and some of these ministries are clearly just checking boxes on a template, and most of the businesses on this call will not fit in that template. So the question is, can we discard the template during COVID to assist through the government programs instead of the strict adherence to making widgets fit into widget categories?
Listen, I understand. Obviously, some of these programs are designed with great intentions, but ultimately, in reality, they don't work. So I'll use an example. Initially, the rent subsidy program that both the provincial and the federal government had initially created, where the landlords were to apply for the subsidy, and obviously there was a portion that the provincial government, federal government, and the landlord was supposed to throw in along with the tenant, so kind of like 25. But we saw lots of challenges with that, and we recognized that needed to change. So the support needed to go directly to tenants. and we're able to work with the federal government and make changes, and that is now has been modified and rolled out. And this is why we are having the kind of discussions we're having here today, to exactly listen and learn and try to figure out how we can improve some of these programs, and why we've kept billions of dollars in contingency to make sure, A, we're able to provide the supports that are necessary, B, we're also able to modify the programs if it doesn't meet the criteria. If it's really so restrictive that it doesn't actually work. Or people are having a hard time checking off certain boxes. And as I pointed out, it is not easy to come up with every possible scenario and try to come up with a program that meets every single requirements. And this is why there's sort of a continuous work in terms of reorganizing or redeploying modified programs to make sure that ultimately the sports get to the people that need them the most.
Thank you. The next question is, who sets the restrictions on town-operated facilities? For example, on a 200 by 85-foot sheet of ice, you can have 9 skaters and a coach, yet the pools are operating at 30% capacity. Not only is there no data to support this inconsistency, these restrictions are limiting the ability for children to exercise, thereby impacting mental and physical health. In addition, why is a restaurant size not considered when determining the 10 indoor dining restrictions? So I guess looking at perhaps a percentage of the LLBO occupancy limits.
Yeah, so my answer to that would be, obviously, decisions are made in consultation, mostly led by the Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health, and also, and he works closely with all of the regional medical officers of health. And then there's a command table, and of course, the recommendations are made to the minister and ultimately the cabinet, and so forth. But the municipalities also play a role in terms of if it's a municipally owned property, they have every right to kind of, introduce their own restrictions or how they're going to run it or what sort of capacity they're going to allow. Of course, they have to work with the public health officer and with the provincial health as well to make sure they're meeting the requirements. But the regional officer of health, they do have the ability or the powers to modify some of these restrictions depending on the area. So that does happen. And I can understand the frustration and the example used by you in the question in terms of the ice rink and obviously the swimming pool example. And believe me, we hear those every single day, such as Walmart, Costco versus, the small business owner. Listen, we just, I won't name names because I'm not sure whether the business owner would be comfortable or not, but just yesterday we received a picture from one of the local business owners from a Walmart washroom where 5 people are allowed in a Walmart washroom and 10 people are allowed in his restaurant. So it is hard to understand. It is hard to believe. And I get that. And I can tell you that the Premier gets that. And if it was up to us, and we didn't have COVID-19, obviously the decisions would be very, very different. But we are in some ways restricted in terms of, receiving and following the public health advice. Like I said, I mean, those are the professionals at the end of the day. We have a command table. They're analyzing the numbers every single day, and we do have to work with them. And that's what Ontarians also expect. And we're fairly in tune. And I must say, we're regularly having these conversations and trying to figure out where the pulse is. What is it that the Ontarians want? Whether some of the policies that we're introducing are working or not. No secret. I mean, if you look at some of the other provinces or some of the states down south of the border and some of the challenges they're facing overall, I think Ontario has done a tremendous job, even looking at Quebec. They're having a hard time managing their numbers, but Ontario has led for the most part in a good way, and a lot of other provinces and states are looking our way. And so it didn't just happen by mistake. Unfortunately, there are consequences where these examples are there for us to see in terms of just common sense. It doesn't make sense. And just stay tuned is kind of what I would say. We're working to address some of those some of the issues with capacity.
That you may have just preempted my next question because it may be part of the stay tuned, but is that notion of looking at the percentage of a restaurant's capacity versus just the flat 10? If you've got a restaurant that has capacity for 500 people versus a restaurant that has capacity for 50 people, yet they're operating at the same 10.
Or a banquet hall, for instance, right? I mean,
hall.
yeah. So same thing, and I'm, just believe me, these are very, very difficult decisions. That's something I can assure you that the Minister of Health and others are talking to the command table and public health to find a solution and to work with them in terms of how we can safely address some of these concerns, and we can get these businesses open back up in a meaningful way. So obviously, as you mentioned, Scott, I mean, if you got a capacity for 500 or in some cases 1,000 guests, and you're only allowed to bring in 10, it makes absolutely no sense. You got to have more than that, just in terms of staff to manage that facility, and then to have 10 guests maximum in your facility. As a former business owner, I can tell you it makes no sense, right? So we're working to address it. So hopefully very soon, like I said, vaccine is another item that is hopefully in early new year, which is going to help us address some of these concerns. Rapid testing is another area. We've gotten some kits for rapid testing that are currently being deployed to areas where there is the strongest need, such as long-term care facilities and other frontline healthcare professionals. Obviously, those are priority areas, but as more rapid testing comes online, I think will help businesses open up faster as well, because they'll have the ability to have instant results, and obviously, and then people can go for a more detailed test elsewhere should the need arise. But other than that, the rapid testing and coupled with vaccine should really help us. So let's hope that it is not too long before we're able to get back to normal.
One of the kind of hidden issues, I guess, through the pandemic has been mental health. As people are working from home, as they're more and more isolated from friends and families, their own personal mental health and the mental health of those around them has been a challenge. And I know that the province has been looking at this very closely. Has the roadmap to wellness has invested, I think, close to $200 million in mental health. Can you talk a little bit more about what may be available in Milton specifically, or how people can access some of these mental health services?
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, it's an area that we're well aware of. Obviously, mental health was a huge issue before COVID, and now it has only gotten worse. That's no secret, because people are having all sorts of challenges trying to make it through day by day, just in their regular lifestyle. Before COVID-19, we had committed just under $4 billion just on the mental health initiative alone. But since we're investing additional almost $15 million to increase access to mental health and addiction services right across this province, to help families, young people, children, frontline workers, and others during these unprecedented COVID-19 times. and also additional 3 million to expand virtual and online services, including addiction supports, internet-based services, and online peer support for community mental health and others. So we locally in Milton, have some wonderful organizations that do a tremendous work. But we're there to provide them with all the resources that are necessary so they can continue to provide help right across this province.
Thank you. If we can, I want to just come back to the broadband issue. And you talked about the one area in I think Moffat or
Brookville.
Brookville, okay.
Yeah.
Which is great. We hear about the broadband issue probably as regularly as you do. The frustrations that the business people are having, some of them paying upwards of $700 a month for internet service, which still then remains very sketchy and cuts in and out. So it's very difficult for them to operate their businesses. Lots of announcements around broadband, cooperation between the provincial and federal government. How do we make sure that that Halton, Milton specifically, get our fair share of the funding? I think a lot of times people forget that the Milton does have rural and near urban areas, even though we are part of the GTHA.
And listen, I maybe some on the call might know and some won't know. Listen, I live in a rural part of Milton, so I can tell you from a first-hand experience what it's like. And I also have 3 kids. 2 of them are in school still, so you can imagine. So the challenges we're going through. So as you pointed out, as I mentioned earlier as well, there's the pilot project that we launched in the Brookville area, which is obviously north part of Milton near Moffat. It's going to cover a 5-kilometer radius. This is an issue that I heard loud and clear leading up to a campaign as well, especially from the rural folks, the farmers and small businesses. This is by far their number one issue. And, even though both provincial and federal governments are working together and are introducing initiative and projects to address this concern. Of course, I mean, we know, our province, it's huge. It is, bigger than most countries out there. That's no secret. But to imagine a place like Milton, so close to Toronto, part of the GTA, and you don't have internet service. I can tell you, like even some of the major leading cell phone services. So for instance, if I were to carry a Bell cell phone in my area where I live, I get very limited service. I would not even sort of get an interest on a Bell cell phone, believe it or not, in Milton. And it's there's no quick fix to this. There isn't, unfortunately, a quick solution, even though the project that Sengen is running in Brookville area, and it's a pilot project, if that is to work, and if the technology, which is really new, which is up and coming, it's being tested, if that works, and I think we can move mountains, because it's not hardwire, it's not running fiber optics, it is literally a Wi-Fi, antennas that they would put at different places, and then you got a Wi-Fi. You get in a neighborhood of about 100 megabyte second download, and I believe 25 Mbps upload, which is really good compared to what we in the rural Milton we currently get in a neighborhood of about 5 Mbps download, and you're lucky if you're able to get 1 Mbps upload. And so this could be the fix, but not there yet. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Unfortunately, the broadband is federally regulated sector as well, with the telecommunication companies provided, and serviced under CRTC. So it's even though the Ontario government is doing everything it can, but in some ways limited in terms of what we can do because it is federally regulated sector.
Do you know if there's a time frame for the pilot project to know whether it is successful or not?
So it is supposed to be launched by spring. So let's assume March, April that it's in place. And I'm assuming that it's not going to take very long for us to find out after that whether it's successful or not, whether people are able to get the internet service that supposedly they should be getting, because it's a new technology and so on. I'm sure there'll be some hiccups along the way, but let's hope we can address those quickly. And this is something that we can replicate right across this province.
Just a reminder to people on the line that if you do have any questions, please put them in the box. We're counting down, so time's running out to ask questions. While we're waiting, I've been noticing in a positive way that the government is still keeping Ontario open for business. We're still doing virtual trade missions to India and elsewhere. We signed the trade agreement with the UK, so thank you for that. It keeps a lot of our businesses busy with foreign markets. But is there more you can tell us about what the government is trying to do with helping the export sector?
100%. Listen, and obviously led by Minister Fedeli, who's a former Minister of Finance, who really understands and has been working day and night to do everything he can in his power. And he has not stopped. COVID has not put any dent in his plans. He's doing a lot of these trade missions, as you mentioned, Scott, virtually with his team. And honestly, I must say the Premier as well, like he is totally committed to this. We were making so much progress before we hit COVID-19. We created over 300,000 jobs. And one of the things that we were hearing before COVID, and to an extent still here, is the shortage of skilled workers. There were companies looking to hire people, and they could not find people to work for them. And that was a great sort of news in a positive way. Yes, I mean, you rather have that problem versus people looking for a job and unable to find job. And we are very confident that, once we're through this COVID-19 and things get back to normal, we can get our economy firing on all cylinders. And I know that Ontarians and Ontario businesses are very, very hungry for that. And let's hope that vaccine coupled with rapid testing and all of that is a solution, and then we can get that into place sooner rather than later and really get back to normal and get Ontario moving again in a big way. So that's our focus, and I can tell you our government is well aware and is working hard to make sure that we're able to fire up the economy instantly. There's obviously huge revenue hit, no doubt, just like all the businesses have taken, the governments have taken. You just saw the federal budget released or the update a few days ago, and they're running almost 400 million deficit. I mean, think about that. We're nearing or at a $1 trillion debt that ultimately our future generations do have to pay. But I'm not criticizing their spendings at this point in time, because I think our priority right now is to make sure that we're able to provide the help and assistance that Canadians and Ontarians and Miltonians need and deserve. So let's get through this first, and then we can focus on the other items after.
Of course, I can't miss the opportunity to say that Vic Fedeli is also the past president of the North Bay Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely, yes, and he's come out to Milton. He's
Yep.
done a few events with us.
So Parm, I'm going to call on Rachel from the Downtown BIA to say thank you. But before I do that, let me say thank you on behalf of the Chamber for doing this. Always a pleasure talking with you, and always great information. So it was a pleasure to also partner with the Downtown BIA in presenting this. So Rachel, over to you.
Absolutely, Scott and team, it was great to work with you on this. So thank you so much. You guys did the heavy lifting and the negotiating, so I appreciate that. And MPP Gill, we just wanted to say a sincere thank you to you and your whole team for all the research that went into this. There's so much information, there's so much out there. I hear it from business owners every day saying, can you help me understand all the, the services and the supports and the subsidies and the announcements and all that sort of thing. So it's really helpful to have a forum like this where they can get further information. And I know that you and your team have been very very open to questions, and very reachable as well when people have questions. So sincere thank you to you for that. I also just want to recognize all the business owners, big and small, that we're seeing. We're seeing so many interesting things happen in the business community right now. There's businesses pivoting. I see it in downtown Milton every day, just business owners coming up with interesting and unique ways to sort of reinvent themselves and reinvent their businesses. And it's just been amazing to see. And I know they're doing it out of necessity, and it's challenging and it's tough and it's scary, but I think it's there also is some good that's been able to come out of this. So I want to just recognize all the business owners that are doing what they can to sort of survive this storm, and also thank the community for supporting local and supporting the businesses this holiday season and throughout COVID. And Milton has been just sort of wrapped their arms and their support around some of our local businesses. And I know I hear from our business owners how much they appreciate that. So, just continue to consider local, and I think we appreciate opportunities like this to bring everybody to the table and have these discussions. But before I sign out, I do want to put a plug in for Digital Main Street too. So we've got through support from the provincial government, we are rolling that program out in Milton, and I think we've got about 45 to 50 businesses that we've been working with one-on-one to date, just over the last month or month and a half, and just helping them improve their digital marketing. It's a program specifically targeted to small business in sort of the downtown area, but doesn't have to be BIA members specifically. So it's been a great program for the businesses that have gotten on board. There's been a grant, and there's been that one-on-one consultation with digital marketing specialists. So thank you to the Ontario government for their support in that. And if anybody wants more information, I'm available. Feel free to contact the downtown Milton BIA office for information. And thank you again, MPP Gill. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Rachel. It's good to see you back, and thank you for everything you do in our community as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's the end of our forum for today. So thank you again to Parm for joining us, and for all the people that have signed in, and for the people that are on your TV watching this as well.
So before we leave, I just wanted to say, Scott, please, we may not have been able to answer your question, or if something comes to mind later on, please do not hesitate to contact my office, and we'll do everything we can to get you the answers and get you the help that's needed. Once again, Scott, thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it. It's an honor and a pleasure all the time working with you. And Rachel, thanks once again for everything you do as well. Thank you, and thank you to all of the businesses and the members that are on this meeting. Thank you for taking the time.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay.